They are prepared to mount, with the support of the Bloc Québécois, a full-scale assault on religious freedom.
What the amendment is targeting is Section B.
This is a red line.
Did Minister Fraser inform you that he wanted to remove that religious defense? Yes or no?
And I do believe this is a matter that touches on privilege. He specifically is claiming that a particular amendment with particular provisions is coming before the committee, and I don't think you can do that.
That was taken away from us. That was stripped from this Justice Committee, which I find deplorable.
I'm also so encouraged by the fact that we have 14 Conservative MPs that are here.
I'm going to stop you from speaking now.
I will continue to say the things out loud that many of my colleagues and many in government and far too close to government do not have the courage to say, and I will never be silenced from saying it.
It's kind of a crazy situation we find ourselves in to even be having this conversation. We see a political party who says they are very concerned about the overreach of the federal government, and yet comes here to Ottawa begging for that federal government to have more power over the people who send them here. Shamefully, yeah, on you. You are a hypocrite.
So I'm going to ask you to apologize.
Oh, that's not going to happen.
There is a standing order that allows us to be appealed directly to the Speaker if you deprive him of the floor. You probably don't know that.
Put it this way, Mr. Giovanni is not going to speak again until he retracts those comments.
Okay. Well, Chair, then I would like to raise a question of privilege.
This may be one of the most important videos we have ever produced, and we strongly encourage you to watch it until the end. Over the past week, a highly controversial Bloc amendment has been circulating in the media. Its goal is simple and dangerous. It would remove a safeguard in the criminal code and open the door to prosecuting a member of any religious faith solely for their beliefs. In this episode, we take you inside yesterday's Justice Committee meeting, which was scheduled for 8 hours. Because of a parliamentary blackout, only the final 4.5 hours were accessible, and as of now, none of the footage is available on Parleview. We've done our best to keep our coverage concise, but what we did obtain is deeply alarming. You will see some of the arguments leading up to the vote on the amendment, the dangerous attempts by Liberal members to violate parliamentary privilege, the blatant disregard for long-standing procedure, and the inspiring effort now underway to undo the damage. This is about safeguarding freedom of expression and protecting every Canadian's right to hold their religious beliefs without fear of prosecution.
Let's take a look. So before we get to the committee, folks, we have to inform you what is actually changing here. This is the current criminal code, and this is section 319 or 319. What does this say? Public incitement of hatred. Everyone who, by communicating statements in any public place, incites hatred against any identifiable group, where such incitement is likely to lead to a breach of the peace, is guilty of an indictable offense and is liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years or an offense punishable on summary conviction.
Willful promotion of hatred. 2. Everyone who, by communicating statements other than in private conversation, willfully promotes hatred against any identifiable group is guilty of A. An indictable offense and is liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years, or B. An offense punishable on summary conviction.
Willful promotion of anti-Semitism. Everyone who, by communicating statements other than in private conversation, willfully promotes anti-Semitism by condoning, denying, or downplaying the Holocaust, is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years, or is guilty of an offense punishable on summary conviction. This is where the amendment targets, folks. So this is the defenses to the actual criminal code violation. And what the amendment is targeting is section B. So it says, no person shall be convicted of an offense under subsection 2 if in good faith the person expressed or attempted to establish by an argument an opinion on a religious subject or an opinion based on a belief in a religious text. So what the amendment aims to do is to remove that section, which means to remove that defense. What does this do? This opens up any member of any religious community to possible prosecution just because of a belief. It opens up any member of any religious faith who is preaching to prosecution just because of what you're preaching in your faith. Now, it doesn't necessarily protect you from incitement to violence, because that's a different story. But this is a problem because this is around hate. And we've discussed this before. The issue with these ridiculous hate speech laws is who gets to define what is hateful. This is the concern. And this has been a protection in Canada for decades. And it is being ripped out. Now, Sean Fraser will say, well, you know, the justice community hasn't needed to rely on that defense for the last couple of decades. Well, here's the problem. We really haven't had hate laws that are this aggressive that you're trying to implement. So using that as an excuse to put this in, when you're putting in a law whose sole intent is to start prosecuting for people for hate laws, it doesn't hold water. And this is why groups around the country are sounding the alarm. Over 65% of Canadians believe in some sort of higher power. Now, I am not a religious person. Tanya's not a religious person.
More agnostic.
But we understand that people that are religious deserve to have this right. And also, if this right to practice religion and this right of freedom of expression starts to be eroded this way, it's a very slippery slope. And it's only a matter of time before they start coming after non-religious people for things that they say. So this is extremely dangerous.
Well, it's like the state is trying to impose secularism, and that's not okay.
Right. It's a violation between the separation of church and state. Now, this is where we get into committee. So 4 hours had already gone by at this point. We'd already covered some of this in our video that we dropped yesterday. But this is around the 4-hour mark into committee, and they were in the midst of discussing the block amendment. You're going to see some sections here that are sped up because we wanted to show you in real time everything that happened at committee, who was present, because there started to be a massive number of Conservatives that started to enter committee as time went on. So with that, here's what happened in the last back half of the Justice Committee yesterday.
I will ask some questions hypothetically through you, Chair, that it would be wonderful if the Liberal government's representative on this committee, Ms. Latanzio, would answer, which is whether the government is okay disregarding the calls that have come from Muslims, Christians, Jews, uniting all religious observant religious members of the Abrahamic faiths and other faiths as well, who are alarmed that this will infringe on their religious freedom. I would ask the Liberal government's representative here as well about how the government squares the fact that the Supreme Court has only upheld the constitutionality of Canada's hate speech laws in the first place because of these defenses, which exist to provide for a wide array of protections, understanding the importance of religious freedom and of freedom of expression. I would hope the government, in its submissions and in its comments here, would answer the question of what precisely they think it is doing, other than alienating people of faith, to have someone who's now a minister of the Crown look to Canadians and say that they should be prosecuted if they dare express a religious belief the government finds objectionable. And I would also ask the government why it has continued to respond to these questions with silence. Silence when the media was asking, silence when members of Parliament in question period were asking, and silence now when I'm asking, and these members are curiously glued to their phones, rather than deal with the fact that they are prepared to mount, with the support of the Bloc Québécois, a full-scale assault on religious freedom in this country. We have had tens of thousands of people that have reached out to us, that have signed petitions, that have sent emails. Members of Parliament from all parties have been receiving phone calls and emails and visits to our office for days now, because this is a red line. This is the government that was not that long ago entertaining stripping charitable status away from houses of worship, and is now deciding to take away religious freedom protections in the criminal code to protect people of faith who believe in good faith in religious scriptures from prosecution. It is not only shameful that this amendment has even been considered by a government that pretends to speak for Canadians, but it is all the more shameful that the representatives of the Liberals here on this committee do not have the courage of their convictions to state on the record what they are going to do.
So this came in response to Andrew Lawton trying to question the parliamentary secretary to Sean Fraser, who was actually sitting in committee, questioning her on, like, why are you doing this? What problem do you hope to solve here? And there's been nothing from the Liberals on this.
Well, and that's just it. With our laws, especially our criminal laws, what is the goal? Why are you trying to put in extra legislation for a problem that doesn't exist?
And what was brought up repeatedly by the Conservatives, Larry Brock, everybody else, Roman Baber, is a problem. We've called it before. How about you start exercising the laws that we have right now? Because there are many provisions in the laws to deal with this stuff.
Now, I will say, if you watch the full committee, there was some political games, perhaps you could call it that, by the Conservatives. Like, they weren't totally innocent. They were trying to get this amendment pushed aside, and they were wanting to discuss Bill C-14 instead. But at this point, there's nothing else that they can do. They are outnumbered because the Bloc is voting with the Liberals in this committee. And the only things they can really do are kind of play games and filibuster.
And filibustering does get a bad rap in many cases when you're trying to do good things. But unfortunately, the filibuster has to be there in order to actually give parties a tool when bad things are trying to be accomplished as well. And so the Conservatives repeatedly were trying to introduce motions to shelve Bill C-9 and actually get to a law and amend that to put in some protections to that, to reform bail, which is C-14, introduce proper bail reform with some of the amendments that they want to put in there, and actually save people's lives. You know, protect women, protect men, protect everybody because of people that are out on bail repeatedly and committing violent crimes. But they don't want to do that. This is their priority, Bill
Right.
C-9.
Taking away Canadians' freedom of religion.
It's disgusting. And Larry Brock was, not just Larry, all of them were phenomenal folks. If you want to spend a day, whenever this footage does become available, watching a committee meeting for 8 hours the entire day, this is one to watch. They were fighting so hard throughout this, I can't even tell you. Really, really makes you proud. But as we move along, you'll see Larry Brock start questioning some of the legislation writers that were actually at committee. Now, these aren't elected members of Parliament. They're people that draft the legislation at the direction of the government.
And they typically do have additional training to do this. They're not just plucked off the street. But it was interesting that they couldn't answer Larry Brock's questions.
Did Minister Fraser inform you that he wanted to remove that religious defense? Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, if I may, what I will say is Bill C-9 does not, as drafted or introduced, contain a proposal that would withdraw or
I'm aware
remove
of
the
that.
defense.
Did Minister Fraser, during the drafting of this bill, during all of your consultations, maybe not you yourself, but other members in the department, including the minister himself, perhaps even Ms. Latanzio, did anyone from a political entity, whether it's the minister or the parliamentary secretary, give you instructions to explore the possibility of removing that religious defense? Yes or no?
I think the way that I can be helpful to the committee is to clarify that both the communications that we give to the minister and the instructions that we receive from the minister are subject to solicitor-client privilege, and I am not able to share any more on this than we have already.
The instructions he gives you is not protected. So I disagree with you on that interpretation. And perhaps if the minister, who obviously is probably following this, because he had a very, very uncomfortable week in the House of Commons, flip-flopping, not being clear with Canadians, backing himself into a corner, trying to appease the Bloc Québécois, who made it abundantly clear that you pull out of this secret agreement that we had, don't expect us to support any provision of Bill C-9. And that panicked the minister. That panicked the Prime Minister. That panicked these 4 members of the Justice Committee. So now they're playing coy. Now we want to hear from the committee. Well, to my colleague, Mr. Lawton's point, if that was truly genuine, they wouldn't have canceled meetings where we had witnesses lined up. And perhaps we could have explored by hearing from stakeholders as to whether or not this is an appropriate removal. But that was taken away from us. That was stripped from this Justice Committee, which I find deplorable. But it's clear the Liberals will do whatever it takes to pass this, even though it was never their idea, it was never their intention 2 years ago, it was never their intention during the hearing of the numerous witnesses that we've heard, until it became abundantly clear that they would be going into a winter break without the passage of Minister Fraser's signature piece of criminal legislation, the only piece of criminal legislation that he had brought forward to be studied at committee since the election, almost 8 months ago.
Man, Mr. Brock is going to make a way better Attorney General than Sean Fraser.
Well, it's just unfortunate they're not in there now, but, you know, here we are. And what he's calling out is, I don't even know what to call it anymore, folks, but you have people dying in the streets. You have people dying in their homes. You have kids being shot in their homes while they're asleep. You have kids being assaulted in their homes, 3-year-olds, by perverts out there, all as a result of them being out on bail and not held in custody after their arrest, not being denied bail because of the dangers that they threaten to the community, all are as a result of the principle of restraint. And we've talked about that ad nauseum. And what's Sean Fraser's priority? C9.
Taking away your religious freedoms.
Whether you voted Conservative or Liberal or NDP or Bloc in the last election is irrelevant. What is relevant is what this law aims to do.
Right, and you don't create a better society by taking away freedoms.
Like it or not, it's everyone's God-given right to hate each other. It is. But this is the price, right? The price of allowing freedom of expression and freedom of speech is to allow somebody to think poorly of one another. It's allowing religions to have their own beliefs.
And when that crosses over into violence or threats of violence, we already have laws that deal with that.
So there is no reason for the government to be stripping away the right to free expression, especially when it comes to having religious beliefs. It is a dangerous, dangerous precedent to set. And I shudder to think where this could go. And we are not overstating this.
Well, and this is why we have to fight so hard against it.
Now, as we move ahead, it was discovered that Sean Fraser actually leaked the amendment that was actually going to be presented at this committee because the Conservatives hadn't seen it yet. And this really, really concerned the Conservatives. And Garnet Jennis, who is not a voting member of this community, he was brought in as backup because of how good he is at procedure.
First procedural issue I wanted to raise is just regarding a statement that my colleague, Mr. Lawton, referenced from Minister Fraser. I noticed in that statement that it says, today, as part of its study of Bill C-9, the House of Commons Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights is set to discuss an amendment repealing Section 313 sub 3 sub B. And I wonder if you could provide a ruling, Chair, on whether the minister's announcement of that amendment that I don't think was made public by the committee or had been moved yet constitutes a violation of the privileges of committee, or at least if you could rule on whether this is a question that touches on the issue of privilege.
I haven't seen the minister's statement, to be honest with you. So you want to suspend for a second? I can.
Chair, if you want to consider that question, and I can.
I'm happy to do that if you want to continue.
Continue for the time being. It was tweeted by the minister at 3:07, and I do believe this is a matter that touches on privilege. He specifically is claiming that a particular amendment with particular provisions is coming before the committee, and I don't think you can do that.
So again, we are getting more familiar with the protocols around parliamentary privilege than we would actually like to. Because just to recall, parliamentary privilege is not the allowance to do something, it's the duty to do something. The terminology is a little different. Parliamentary privilege is the ability for any member of parliament to exercise their oath of office, to participate in the legislative process, to voice the concerns and the feedback from their constituents, and to be able to vote accordingly. So we've seen examples of this over the last couple of years with Michael Chong having his family threatened. That is a violation of parliamentary privilege because you have a foreign state trying to coerce or influence a member of parliament in how they're going to vote just because of the way that they're threatening their family. And this is a potential breach of privilege as well because you have a minister publicly sharing an amendment trying to influence public opinion before this amendment is even tabled at committee, before the Conservatives even are able to see the amendment and debate on it. Meanwhile, you have the Justice Minister on Twitter, and we showed you that as part of Mr. Jennis reading that, trying to influence public opinion before this is even being brought forward at committee. It's a blatant violation of parliamentary procedure and the standing orders. And I didn't see any evidence that the chair even considered that. And the problem is that the chair just moves on, and the chair, and I've checked this. I've actually consulted with a chair of another committee that is currently serving as chair, and I said, "Can you just confirm my understanding? I thought that when a question of privilege is raised, everything stops, and the chair has to deal with that immediately." And I was informed, yes, question of privilege takes precedence. You must deal with it right then and there. So not only is the Liberal Justice Minister, Sean Fraser, violating parliamentary procedure and the standing orders by doing what he did, now James Maloney, the chair of the Justice Committee, is violating parliamentary procedure in not addressing this right away. We continue.
I appreciate Ms. Latanzio earlier in her unwillingness to answer my question, said she would be listening to the interventions of members of this committee and sharing thoughts of her own. she has had the opportunity to listen to interventions from this committee, and I did not hear in what she said a clear position on where the Liberals will be voting on this amendment. Now, I don't know whether she wrote her own remarks or whether Minister Fraser did the courtesy of it, but I do not believe for a second that she is speaking as a rogue member that has not consulted with the minister that she represents and the prime minister she represents. Now, we did learn earlier in media coverage that the prime minister's office and the minister of justice were apparently not in line on this issue, and that may have led to some of the subsequent cancellations, postponements, extensions, abbreviations of meetings. But we are talking about a fundamental altering of not just the criminal code, but of long-standing religious freedoms in this country. The kind of decision that, if it is to exist at all, should have been a standalone bill. And it was. And when it was a standalone bill, the Liberals rejected it because they realized that this does not belong in a pluralistic country that represents people of all faith backgrounds and a House of Commons that represents people of all faith backgrounds. So my request of the government right now, my request of Ms. Lattanzio as the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice is to have the courage to state that they will be voting for this, if that is in fact their decision, or to have the even greater courage of standing up for religious liberties and vowing to reject this.
All right. We're going to put it to a vote.
Good. Okay. So vote on BQ3. Madame Lattanzio. Oui. Wow. Mr. Chang.
Surprise.
Madame Dillon.
No idea that was coming.
Mr. Housefather.
Oui.
Mr. Baber.
No.
Mr. Brock.
Absolutely not.
Mr. Gill.
Big no.
Mr. Lawton.
Absolutely not.
Monsieur Fortin.
Okay. BQ3 carries.
So, ladies and gentlemen, BQ3, that was the amendment in question. And you could probably hear some of the Conservatives voicing their disgust as the Liberals started voting for this. Anthony Housefather, very well known that he is of the Jewish faith, voting to criminalize his own religion. Basically.
Essentially, yeah.
In any of the beliefs that that someone would consider to be hateful. Who gets to determine that? I don't know. But we don't know. We don't know. Now, in anticipation of this passing, the Conservative staffers were hard at work in behind the scenes, and want to make sure we put a huge shout out to the staffers that are working for the Conservative MPs, because they're some of the unsung heroes that you never see. And they were preparing a new amendment to be brought forth by the Conservatives to try to ensure that there is at least some safeguard for religious beliefs and freedom of expression as a result of this amendment coming in.
Point of order.
Yes, Mr. Lawton.
I have an amendment pertaining to the matter at hand that I would fit into the line now that's being circulated with the clerk. I just wanted to, that may not be a point of order, but it should go in now logically with where we are.
So the matter at hand being the clause by clause?
Sorry, the matter at hand being where we are in the order for amendments. It fits into where we are now in the bill.
Okay, well, maybe we can suspend for a moment or two so we can have a look at it.
Well, I can read it and you can make a decision.
Well, why don't you read it and then
Okay.
we'll suspend, because I assume you don't have it translated.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
This was prepared by legislative drafters. And I should just, by way of context, the reason it was not in our original amendment package is because we had not seen the block amendment at the time. So it only emerged when we saw that this was coming up. The amendment is as follows in French: que le projet de loi C9.
that Bill C9 under Section 4 should be amended by addition after line 2, page 3 as follows. 6.1. This section cannot be interpreted or applied in a way that it would actually infringe on the freedom of expression or religious freedom.
C9 in clause 4 be amended by adding after line 2 on page 3 the following. 6.1, nothing in this section is to be interpreted or applied so as to interfere with the freedom of expression or the freedom of religion.
Okay, we'll suspend for a moment now. Thank you.
So, that is the attempt by the Conservatives to undo some of the damage. And what ended up ensuing for the rest of the committee was arguing that amendment. And it was a long time. And well, we'll get to that. But let's just see how this starts to play out as we continue through what is becoming the back quarter of the Justice Committee yesterday.
Well, thank you, Chair. I do have a lot that I want to say on this subject, but I'm also so encouraged by the fact that we have 14 Conservative MPs that are here. It's after 10 o'clock here in Ottawa, and we have a committee needs 4 Conservatives at any given time, and I count around the table 14 Conservative MPs that have come out to fight for freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And I want to encourage folks at home that there are so many Conservatives, far more than need to be here, that want to be here to fight for your rights and your freedoms and to oppose this attack on religious liberty. So I've already spoken a bit tonight. I'm going to cede my time now because I want to hear what so many of these other great folks around the table have to say. But Chair, I'll ask you to re-add me to the list at the bottom. And also, if you can, before we go to the next member, give us an update on your deliberations on how the Justice Minister violated the privileges of this committee by leaking confidential information, and when you plan to make a decision on that. Thank you, Chair.
So, you could see in the start of that clip the amount of people that were around committee, and we'll show it now. You can actually see Jonathan Rowe from Newfoundland. The Conservatives had so many people at committee that they were wrapped around over to the Liberal side, so that the Conservatives were literally sitting right next to the Liberals at the table there.
There was a bit of a disagreement that ended up breaking out later on between, was it Arnold Viersen?
Correct.
And the
Mr.
name
Chang.
of Mr. Chang, that's right. And you could just see the tension.
Yeah, the issue is because... So the rules are the Conservatives had to have at least 4 people there because that's their entitlement. But you can have more, right? You can have more, and they can come in and they can speak to motions, they can speak to amendments and things like that. They just need to be added to the speaking list. So what the Conservatives did after they saw that the block motion passed, Team Canada got together. That's what happened.
Well, and I suppose you could make the argument that they're just bringing in more people to filibuster. Sure, but when you've got the Liberals and the Bloc teaming up to take away Canadians' religious freedoms, what else can you do?
It's all hands on deck when you're trying to fight against this, right? So they moved to speaker after speaker after speaker after speaker, all speaking for the danger of removing this type of safeguard and the need to reinstate this safeguard as part of the amendment put forward by Andrew Lawton. So it was something else to see that, and I was really glad that Garnet Genuis called it out. Now, this is a couple of hours after Mr. Genuis raised that question of privilege in the first place.
Right, and Garnet Genuis has been around Parliament for a little while, so he knows procedure quite well, which I think we'll see comes in handy a little bit later on too.
I am resurrecting my motion to prioritize the consideration of Bill C-14, the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act, and work together to report the bill to the House at the earliest opportunity, and I'm seeking unanimous consent at this time. And I just heard a no from the Liberal member, Anthony Housefather.
Thank you, Mr. Brock.
That says everything that we need to know, that they do not prioritize, have never prioritized
Thank you, Mr.
community safety. Thank you, Mr. Housefather.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So I don't know how many times that was that Larry Brock tried to move that they shelve C9 so they can actually focus on C14. You know, to introduce bail legislation, to change the laws, to stop all of these animals that are on the street.
And keep Canadians safe.
Right. And all of them were just, you could tell, all of them were ashamed to oppose that, but they did anyway, because that's what they're told to do. And Larry Brock, good on him for calling it out. At this point, they had been in the room for 7 hours and 30 minutes, and that's Baber, that's Brock, and Garnet Jennis,
and Andrew Lawton, I believe,
and Andrew Lawton, and Mr. Gill. So, never mind all the other Conservatives that had joined them afterwards. But now we get to just a phenomenal speech by Melissa Lantsman in defense of religious freedom.
All right. Enough. Ms. Lantsman, you have the floor.
I'll take my time on the floor if the Liberal members opposite stop obstructing the
And your colleague
committee.
to your left. It's happening on both sides, to be fair. So.
The obstruction on the committee, frankly, of studying and of looking at the Liberal bail system, which we have talked about over and over tonight, as not seen as a priority. In fact, it's odd to me that Liberals would stand in the House and talk about the obstruction of their own Liberal bail laws while obstructing their own legislation at committee by prioritizing what we learned last week, and we'll start from the beginning. We learned last week as a secret deal between the Liberals and the Bloc to eliminate the obvious safeguards that we've had in this country for a number of years, for a number of decades, on the expression of religious freedom. And when you come to Parliament, I think if you grew up in a background like I think many of us grew up in communities, I was raised by my community and indeed my family who moved to this country, frankly, so they didn't have to practice religion behind a curtain, like candles under floorboards, which is both dangerous, but obviously what they would have had to do in the Soviet Union, to be able to practice freely. And I'll have to say, over the better part of the last 2.5 years, we've seen, particularly in the community that I represent, that I come from, an explosion of anti-Semitism. We've seen gunshots into schools. We've seen fire bombings into businesses, protests on a weekly basis in residential neighborhoods. And this is what this is predicated on trying to solve. The problem is that C9 doesn't do any of that, and it wouldn't stop any of that. And it is sad that trying to convince a community coming in at the 11th hour, remember when Bill C9 was introduced, it was a day after the government recognized a Palestinian state. That's exactly why C9 got to an announcement when it did, which is shameful in its own right, to try to distract from the absolute vitriolic relationship that this government has created with the Jewish community and a longstanding Democratic ally. That's why C9 was introduced. But particularly on this amendment, there is no reason why anybody should come here and fight on behalf of their community. Fight the scourge of anti-Semitism in the community, fight what's going on in the streets, fight what's going on in the schools, in our universities, in every institution, in labor unions, in our university faculty clubs, in police forces themselves now. If you don't do it on the basis of something that you believe. And taking away the right to believe that, I think, is a very, very big problem in the country. And I don't think that anybody would fight the fight that our party, that our leader, that I have been fighting for the better part of 2 years, if they didn't do it from a place of deep religious belief. Because this isn't about a state or a conflict on the other side of the world. It is rooted in the value of Torah and religious scripture. Not necessarily if you're Jewish, if you're Christian, if you're Muslim, if you're Hindu, if you're Sikh. If you're not fighting for the things that you believe in, and if you're not fighting on the basis of that, and you're not fighting to protect it, then there's no point of doing any of this at all. And that's why I think Mr. Lawton's amendment is important. What I don't understand is how it could be interpreted as anything other than the protection of freedom. Anything other than the protection of freedom to believe what you want to believe. Because none of what has been expressed by either the Bloc or, frankly, the Liberals now who have aligned themselves with the Bloc, who used to stand up against this stuff, none of this would have been, none of what they have said would be prosecuted, would actually have been prosecuted. Like this was already against the law. And we see in communities over and over again, every weekend after every weekend, and I'm oftentimes the only one to stand up and denounce it. And at great peril. And it's because fundamentally I believe that you should be able to practice your religion in this country. You should be able to hear your religion preached. You should be able to teach it in school because it is a fundamental value of why we fight for the things that we fight for. I'll tell you, my background is not dissimilar to the background of so many other Canadians. My parents came here from the former Soviet Union. My father was an uncredentialed engineer. He drove a taxi, put my mom through school. And in one generation, you go from the front seat of a taxi to the front row of Parliament Hill. That can only happen here. And one of the fundamental reasons they moved here is so that they can be who they wanted to be, practice the religion that they wanted to practice out in the open. So they weren't subjugated into a corner where Jews, frankly, in the Soviet Union were subjugated to punishment or, frankly, much worse throughout history. They came here for one of those freedoms. They came here to be able to raise their children the way they wanted to be able to stand up for what they believed in, and to be able to have that protected in law. And to watch the party that once believed in all of those things too line up with the Bloc and put all of that in jeopardy, you have to wonder if saying anything at all against hate in this country is ever going to be worth it with members opposite in this committee. We've said these things, we've defended communities at great peril to our own safety, to the safety of our families, and I think all of that is worth it. And I think all of that is worth it, predicated on the fact that you would be protecting the fundamental freedom to believe what you want to believe in this country. And I don't have to believe what everybody else believes, and nobody has to believe what I believe, but I should believe in the right to protect it, because without that, we lose it all here. Mr. Chair, I think that Mr. Lawton's amendment on this is critical. And it is critical to send a message to all Canadians who have faith those frankly who don't, to tell the world, to tell the rest of the G7, the G20, if you will, that this is a country based on the rule of law, democracy, freedom, the values that we used to hold as shared values. And I wouldn't want to think that the last 2 years of advocacy on behalf of any community, whether it's the community that I come from or any other one that I have stood up for and fought for, would be in jeopardy because the Liberals want to make a deal with the Bloc. I can't imagine that anybody who has stood up for their community could support such an amendment, would support making a deal to eliminate any of the safeguards of something that is the critical center of the way in which many of us were raised, in the way in which many of us live in our communities, interact with our communities. If the thought that you have ever going into a place of worship is what that person is saying, what the clergy at the front of the room saying, criminal or not, I think we have a big, big problem in this country. And we will sit here day after day and hour after hour. And I have spoken to 50 rabbis today, and I will speak to 50 more before tomorrow is over. And they too will express their concern on this. They too will express the same concerns that all clergy in this country will express on this piece of legislation, or on this amendment, frankly. We haven't even gotten to sort of how it all started in the rest of Bill C9. But to all of those watching, particularly in the Jewish community, if you think this legislation will protect you, it will not. It will be used against you. It will be used, the very same people who purport to protect the community will use this legislation against you. It happened on Bill C-63, and they were wrong on that. You cannot have freedom in this country when you curtail freedom. You cannot have safety and security for a community if you are going to pick and choose which verses out of which books you are going to defend. And I will not stop sitting here, not a single hour of a single day. My life has changed over the last number of years, and it's for standing up for a community and a community that I believe in. And there is no chance that being under 24-hour RCMP protection is ever not going to be worth it. I will continue to say the things out loud that many of my colleagues and many in government and far too close to government do not have the courage to say. And I will never be silenced from saying it, not by this amendment and not by any piece of legislation that we will ever allow to come through this House. So with that, Mr. Chair, I am happy to have other colleagues who have come here, who have canceled all of their plans, and I'm sure are happy to cancel all of the rest. And for those who can't do this on Christmas Eve, I am happy to fill that role. I can do it on Christmas Day. I can do it every other single day of the week, and I'm happy to sit in for my colleagues who have stood up for me when this government did not. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to cede my time to many of the other Conservative members that are here fighting for your rights.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Ms. Brockman.
The Conservatives are so lucky to have Melissa Landsman. She's a phenomenal speaker, such a strong lady. This is what a strong, independent woman looks like, folks. You don't have to virtue signal. You just have to carry yourself with confidence and humility and strength. And that's what she does. And I love that she spoke to the camera, to all of us, when she was going through her intervention, and just highlighted so many dangers and so many good reasons that we cannot go down this path. We cannot go down the path that Britain is going on. It is so dangerous, and we cannot afford to do that. So I just want to say thank you so much, Melissa, for your strength, your conviction, and for your willingness to sit through the Christmas break until this horrendous amendment is dealt with in hopefully a positive way for Canadians and people of faith. Now, the thing about Garnet Jennis is he is that guy that you hate when they're opposing you, but you absolutely love when they're on your team.
Well, because he's smart and he knows all the rules.
He knows all the rules. He's quick-witted. He knows when to cross the line and when to just step up to it. And this is about to ignite the last part of this of this meeting. Check this out.
Okay, we have Mr. Jennis again, and then Mr. Viersen.
All right, Chair. I think I'm going to be brief again and go to the bottom of the list because I know Mr. Viersen is eager to get in on this, and I was going to preempt his comments by discussing how the investiture crisis was more important for the development of notions of separation of church and state than the Reformation was, and I know he would be interested in that. But I'll pick up on that later on. So if you can add me to the list again right after you update the committee on how you're planning and when you're planning on ruling on the Minister of Justice's violations of the privileges of this committee by leaking documents that were clearly the property of the committee. So if you can provide an update to the committee on when you're going to rule on the Justice Minister violating the privileges of this committee. And after that, I look forward to hearing from Mr. Viersen and then following up once it becomes my turn again.
I'm going to ask Mr. Lawrence to get a pen and paper and write down, it's under advisement, so every time Mr. Jennis speaks, you can just slide it in front of him for the rest of the evening.
So, Mr. Jennis again says, Chair, what are we doing about this question of privilege? And James Maloney rather flippantly says, well, we should just, have a piece of paper to hold it up in front of Mr. Jennis. That's not how this works, Mr. Maloney. And there was a section where he was being challenged by the Conservatives on his rulings, and they're saying, well, we know you're new here, you've only been here a couple of days. And James Maloney responds, I've been a chair for 6 years. Well, then you should know better.
Absolutely. A question of privilege is a serious thing. It means that an MP is being impeded from doing their duly elected job.
And it doesn't matter if it's one MP or all 343. The priority of a question of privilege remains the same. That's how serious this is taken in Westminster democracy. And it's how serious it should be taken by the chair of the committee. And he's just, it's under consideration. Well, that's a BS answer, Mr. Maloney.
So Mr. Giovanni then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I speak, of course, in favor of Mr. Lawton's amendment. Tomorrow morning there will be hundreds, if not thousands, of churches across our country that open their doors to feed their neighbors. There will be hundreds, if not thousands, of churches across our country who open their doors to offer counseling to heartbroken couples at risk of separating. There will be hundreds of thousands of churches that open their doors to help people overcome addiction and a whole host of other challenges. And the message these churches should be receiving from their government is respect, encouragement, and gratitude for the services they provide for struggling people and for people who need hope. And instead, what they are getting from their government is ridicule, disrespect, and outright attacks on their foundational beliefs, the very beliefs that motivate them to be good citizens and good neighbors, good fathers, good mothers. It's kind of a crazy situation we find ourselves in to even be having this conversation. And in the process of disrespecting these very important Canadian institutions, we have seen hypocrisy exposed on the part of two political parties in this room. On the part of the Bloc Québécois, we see a political party who says they are very concerned about the overreach of the federal government, and yet comes here to Ottawa begging for that federal government to have more power over the people who send them here. Shamefully. Yeah. On you. You are a hypocrite.
Oh.
On the part of the...
All right, Mr. Giovanni, I know you just arrived an hour ago. We had a discussion, a thorough discussion earlier on about language and decorum. Oh. And people from all sides agreed not to be making accusations and using language like that.
Oh, so I wasn't here to make that agreement.
Well, okay, but nonetheless, you said it, and it's inappropriate. So I'm going to ask you to apologize.
Oh, that's not going to happen.
All right, well, then we'll move on to the next speaker. Mr. Lawrence, you have the floor.
Point of order, Chair.
No. What's your point of order? What's your point of order?
It's a point of order, Chair. Chair, first of all, there is no precedent for calling the specific language that Mr. Giovanni used unparliamentary. Members are welcome to disagree with it, but the whole discussion in this bill, I think, is about the fact that speech you might disagree with is not necessarily speech that should be made illegal.
Yeah, Mr. Janice, you're now getting to debate. You've made your point of order.
I'm debating the matter of order.
No, you've made your point of order. You're now in a debate. I'm going to stop you from speaking now. Mr. Giovanni called a member of Parliament a hypocrite. He did not, and I'm moving on to the next speaker, which is Mr. Lawrence.
I was also going to call the Liberal Party a party of colonizers and imperialists, so just to add that to
the speakers list later on. It's
sure,
late
please
in the
add
evening.
me to the
We're
list.
not going to tolerate that type of behavior. Mr. Lawrence, the floor is
Happy
yours.
to say that again.
Challenge your ruling.
Point of order.
Fine, you can challenge my ruling. That's your right. Chair?
You know, I think this exchange really shows that the Liberals know what they're trying to push through with the aid of the Bloc is wrong. Because you wouldn't have to defend it in this manner. You wouldn't have to break up these fights because they wouldn't happen if it was a bill that was good for Canadians.
Well, and the point that Giovanni made against the Bloc, excuse the pun, is on point. Because all we've been hearing from the Bloc on the legislation that they're trying to use in Quebec to ban certain religious paraphernalia and garb, and the government wants to essentially remove the notwithstanding clause or the ability to even to even use it. It's government overreach trying to interfere in how the provinces are governing themselves. And so all you've been hearing from the Bloc is, you know, this is government overstepping. But then you have the Bloc introducing this amendment and the Liberals supporting it of completely overreaching and disrupting freedom of expression and criminalizing potential religious beliefs.
Well, and it's not just overstepping into the provinces or into the municipalities, it's overstepping into Canadians' lives directly.
Yeah, into your homes, into your places of worship. And that's frightening.
There is a standing order that allows us to be appealed directly to the Speaker if you deprive him of the floor. You probably don't know that, but it was adopted as part of a provision that Bardish Chagger brought forward.
All right, thank you, Mr. Janice.
You're welcome.
Be sustained. Madame Latanzio.
In favor.
Mr. Chang.
Yes.
Madame Dillon. Mr. Housefather.
Oui.
Mr. Jackson.
No.
Mr. Brock.
No.
Mr. Gill.
No.
Mr. Lawton.
No.
Monsieur Fortin.
Oui.
Hey, come on, Jim.
Okay.
Your decision is sustained.
All right, Mr. Lawrence, you have the floor. All right. Mr. Lawrence, please.
I wish to confirm Mr. Giovanni's comment that the Bloc are hypocrites.
All right, we'll move on. We can do this all night if you want.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Holman, yeah.
Point of order.
Ms. Lansman, yeah.
Mr. Chair, is there a list of words that you can provide the committee that you're not okay with?
If you're going to sit here and call another member of Parliament a hypocrite, then yes.
I believe that
keep
he
doing
called
this all over.
he did not
did.
call
Anyway.
another member of Parliament
I've
a
ruled on it
hypocrite.
once. I've ruled on it a second time.
This is not the same thing.
We can,
Mr.
well, what's
Chair.
your point of order then?
My point of order is whether there is a list of acceptable words in this committee. Is that where we're at now?
It's not an exhaustive list, so, all right.
What is the list? Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Holman, you have the floor.
No, point of order. It's the same incident, but it's a different point of order.
Okay, let's hear it.
You ruled on Mr. Giovanni's comment. We
Yeah.
challenged your decision and moved on. The comment made by Mr. Lawrence was not impugning an individual member. He made a general comment about a party. There is no precedent at all that I'm aware of and no standing order that prohibits that, and it is certainly not the same as what you ruled on in the previous member's intervention.
Okay.
We are free in this House and in this committee to make a range of comments
Okay,
about parties
you've
broadly,
made
which are not about
point,
people.
Mr. Lawton. That's no longer a point of order. We're getting into debate.
It is a point of order.
Mr. Holman, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, I was really enjoying the speech that Mr. Giovanni was saying. I was wondering, may I yield my time to allow the gentleman to continue with his speech?
No, we'll continue with the speakers list if you want, though, if you don't want to speak.
Get back on it, Jamil.
Okay.
Monsieur le Président, point d'ordre.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
Go ahead, Mr. Fortin.
Président, je n'ai
Mr. Speaker, I did not hear my colleague, Mr. Giovanni, apologize, and I didn't hear him withdraw his remarks. So I would call for him to withdraw his remarks and for him to apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Fortin, and that's exactly why I took his time away and moved to the next speaker. He refused to apologize, so that's why I moved on.
speak louder.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He refused to apologize.
Yeah.
He refused to retract his comment, and which is why I moved on to the next speaker.
This is, okay. Okay.
Okay, we're back to Mr. Jennis.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if I'd be allowed to read a scriptural text that calls someone a hypocrite, or if that would be also deemed unparliamentary and illegal under the relevant legislation. I actually wonder, since I think Mr. Giovanni is coming up on the list again, that I'll ask you to re-add me to the bottom of the list and strike my position for now.
Put it this way, Mr. Giovanni is not going to speak again until he retracts those comments.
Okay. Well, Chair, then I would like to raise a question of privilege, because it is not merely a matter of order, but it is a matter of privilege that members be able to speak before committee. It is clearly not. And I know, look, you're relatively new in your position, but your authority as chair is not in right of you as an individual. It comes from the rules. It is a reflection of the office that you hold. And there have been multiple occasions today when you have not respected established rules. And, it is an established principle that members have a right to speak. And if you deprive members arbitrarily of the right to speak, if you end their time, deprive them of the floor, these are matters that are appealable directly to the Speaker of the House. I regrettably can't remember the specific standing order, but someone will tell me in due course, and I know it's in there, that when, uniquely in the case where a member is cut off in speaking, that members can appeal directly to the House, to the Speaker, who can overturn the judgments of the chair and nullify all subsequent proceedings. In any event, this is a matter of privilege. Mr. Giovanni is a duly elected member of Parliament. You're welcome to disagree with him. Mr. Fortin is welcome to disagree with him. But he has a right to speak. There are plenty of instances where members, I can think of where Mr. Erskine Smith dropped a few F-bombs at a committee in the last Parliament. And he was encouraged to be more appropriate in his language, but he was not deprived of his rights as a member of Parliament. You cannot simply decide to deprive someone of their right to speak because you don't like what they said. That is a violation of their privileges. So I would encourage you to consider whether this is a matter touching on privilege, and if you find that it is, I will be prepared to move the appropriate motion.
Mr. Janis, let's do it this way. I've been in this position of chair at this committee for a week now. I've served as a committee chair for over 6 years. I notice you've never sat in a position as a committee chair. There's a reason for that, I suspect. Nonetheless, I think that in the circumstances, suggesting that I've been denied anybody an opportunity to speak is verging on laughable, considering we've been here for 7 hours listening to people speak over and over again. This might be your 10th or 11th intervention. I've lost track. So it's an accusation with no merit. Having said all that, I think what is the best course of action right now, our resources end in a few moments. I'm going to suspend this meeting for the day.
Chair, I've raised a question of privilege. You got to rule on the question of privilege.
Meeting suspended.
So that was a dog's breakfast, folks. And when I saw that last part and I saw Maloney end the meeting, I was just in disbelief. Because not only did he not rule on the previous question of privilege, he didn't rule on that question of privilege. And the fact that Maloney is sitting there saying, oh, well, I'm being accused of not letting people speak. Well, it just happened. You just said you're taking his time away and he's not going to be allowed to speak again. And guess what? Chairs don't have that power. We've actually covered this before. Chairs have the ability to conduct meetings. And we've seen this with Kelly McCauley over at OGO when the Liberals were getting so crazy in the last Parliament. And Kelly couldn't do anything because he doesn't have the authority to do anything. He can't just say, well, you're not speaking, because that's a violation of privilege.
It is. And the only things a chair can really do are either suspend or adjourn the meeting.
Right.
That's it. They can suspend for, say, 5 minutes. Everybody gets their composure. Then they're able to continue. Or if everybody is being too rowdy, then they can adjourn the whole thing.
So now, resources is not an excuse to not rule on a question of privilege. You must do that. So the fact that Maloney was just like, bye, it completely violates standing orders and House procedures in ruling on a question of privilege.
Right, because remember, it's not the governing party that decides what the rules of Parliament are. It's this book right here. Now, this is the 3rd edition, and they do have a 4th edition that was just recently released. But point being, it's the Green Book. The Green Book tells the MPs how Parliament is to be run.
Right, and they must abide by it. They absolutely must. So it makes me wonder, the fact that the chair didn't even rule on a question of privilege, is that now a question of privilege?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because he's supposed to do that. And you're potentially violating the privilege of everybody by not even ruling on a question of privilege.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, when the chair makes a ruling, it's whether or not it's to be brought to the House. It's not a ruling of, is this a breach of privilege?
Pretty much. So I wonder if we'll see a question of privilege today. Now, this has been a long video, folks. I hope you made it to the end. We've shown you some of the most important parts of this, but this does not mean that the rest of this committee was not important. What we tried to do is give you a sense of what was going on and some of the major events, but there are many, 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 many amazing interventions by folks on the Conservatives that were fighting against this. And given that the amendment discussion of for Mr. Lawton's amendment that he brought forward has not finished, right? They didn't adjourn the meeting, they suspended it. It means that this isn't done. This isn't over. And they're going to continue. So the point of this is you need to understand what's going on inside a committee and what's going on when these people are making decisions that are affecting your rights as a Canadian and your children's rights and your grandchildren's rights. And what do? You need to be writing letters, you need to be booking appointments, you need to be calling your MP, regardless of party, especially if they're a Liberal or Bloc member, and letting them know this does not fly. I did not vote you in. It was not part of any electoral platform to take away the rights of Canadians, to take away your right to freedom of expression, and to take away your rights to believe in what you want to believe in terms of your religion. And that's what this amendment is in danger of doing. So please share this, discuss it, act on it by contacting your member of parliament and letting them know that this is a red line and Canadians are not going to allow this to happen.